The fields of verdant reach stretched endlessly under a pale sun, rows of wheat and corn swaying gently in the wind. Humans had carved this world from bare soil and harsh weather, transforming it into a productive, breathing farmland at the edge of the galaxy. The sky was calm that morning, but a distant hum from the upper atmosphere disturbed the quiet, a sound unlike any human craft. It was not a ship that belonged to Earth, nor one that the interstellar traders usually flew. It was larger, slower, and carried with it a sense of weariness that humans had never seen before. From the shimmering clouds above descended a damaged alien transport. Its hull was scarred, metal bent in places, engines smoking faintly. The vessel shuddered as it approached verdant reach, wobbling like a bird struggling to land. The farmers paused, their work gloves still in hand, watching the massive craft. Machines whirred softly in the background, sprinklers turning, drones buzzing above the fields, but all attention turned to the stranger in orbit. The transport landed roughly on a flat clearing near the communal barns. The ground shook slightly under its weight. Humans had expected pirates, smugglers, or perhaps scouts from the neighboring colonies, but what emerged was something entirely different. The hatch opened with a hiss of escaping air, and a lone figure descended. She was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Her body was tall and slender with a slightly insectoid frame, covered in shimmering chitin-like skin. Her eyes, large and glimmering like polished amber, reflected the sunlight, and her movements, though deliberate, carried an exhaustion that humans could feel without understanding. She carried nothing but a small bag slung over her shoulder and a quiet dignity that commanded attention without words. When she finally reached the farmers, she stopped. She bowed deeply, touching the ground with her head in a gesture that none of the humans recognized. The murmurs spread quickly through the crowd. Humans rarely saw alien species in person, and never like this, never one who approached them as a supplicant rather than a conqueror. "I am Nira," she said, her voice soft but carrying a resonance that vibrated through the air. "I come for my children." He was older, graying at the temples, and bore the lines of someone who had spent decades negotiating with traders, bureaucrats, and occasionally pirates. He regarded her carefully. "Your children, where are they?" "Just feed my children." The human leaders whispered among themselves, debating. Galactic law was clear. No aid could be given to refugees without approval from higher councils. To take in an alien in such a state could bring sanctions, fines, even military action from larger powers. Yet no one spoke against the visible truth in front of them, a mother willing to sacrifice everything for her children. The decision fell to a smaller cooperative, the farmers who had carved a living from verdant reaches soil for generations. Their leader, a woman named Mara, stepped forward. Her hands were calloused, her arms strong from decades of labor. She looked at Nira and said simply, "We will feed your children, you will work our fields." Nothing more, nothing less. Her endurance was astonishing. Day after day, she worked tirelessly, pausing only when necessary to care for the small incubators where her children lay. They were strange, alien shapes, fragile and demanding constant care. Humans had never seen beings like them, yet they found themselves drawn into the rhythm of her life, adjusting schedules, modifying machines, even learning to communicate in gestures and simple words with the younglings. At night, under the pale twin moons of verdant reach, humans would sometimes watch her. She would sit beside the incubators, softly humming in a language none of them understood. The children would stir and reach toward her, their small limbs weak but filled with a growing energy. The humans began to understand something they had never fully grasped before: the power of sacrifice, the way love and necessity could drive beings beyond ordinary limits. As the days passed, more aliens arrived. They were small groups, scattered, some wounded, some starving. Nira spoke on their behalf, her presence giving them courage. Unlike the galaxy's usual invaders or colonizers, these beings asked not for territory, not for power, but for sustenance and safety. Humans were wary at first, but the example set by Nira inspired them. Instead of turning the newcomers away, they offered food, water, and shelter. The cooperation between humans and aliens created something new. The farm output increased. Machines were redesigned to accommodate alien physiology, irrigation systems adjusted for new crops, and labor schedules altered to suit the strengths of different species. Humans shared knowledge freely, teaching efficient methods, crop rotation, and soil management. Aliens, in turn, shared skills humans had long forgotten, ways to cultivate difficult plants, techniques for hardening soil, and lessons in endurance that machines could not replicate. The galaxy noticed. Traders and distant empires began to whisper about verdant reach. A single human farm world had become a hub not of conquest, but of mutual survival. Humans were no longer just laborers or farmers. They were architects of a new system where compassion was not weakness, but power. Nera herself became a symbol. She was no longer just a mother struggling to feed her children. She represented the unexpected strength of humanity. Humans saw that their species' greatest weapon was not fleets, not weapons, not even politics. It was their ability to care, to endure, and to turn compassion into a force the galaxy could not ignore. Even the human children began to learn from her. They would sit beside the incubators, watching the alien young, learning gestures and soft sounds. They were fascinated, not afraid. Their parents encouraged it, knowing that understanding another species could be more valuable than any training in machinery or weapons. The cooperative that had welcomed Nera began to grow. Humans from neighboring farms, curious and inspired, came to see what was happening. Some stayed, offering extra hands in the fields. Some returned home, taking lessons with them. The planet became a quiet beacon, a living experiment in cooperation, endurance, and the human way of turning adversity into triumph. But challenges remained. Galactic authorities sent envoys to warn the humans. "You are violating interstellar regulations," one stern representative said. "This will not go unnoticed. Aid to non-human species without proper sanction is illegal." The humans had learned something the galaxy often forgot. Rules meant nothing when life itself was at stake. As weeks turned into months, the alien children grew stronger. Their once weak limbs gained muscle, their amber eyes brightened. Nera worked tirelessly beside humans, guiding newcomers, teaching them the rhythms of the land, and instilling in everyone a sense of pride and resilience. One evening, as the sun set and the wind whispered through golden fields, Mara walked beside Nera. The alien mother paused, looking out over the land, and spoke softly. "Your people, you are different, stronger than I imagined. You survive not because you conquer, but because you care. That is all anyone needs to know." The night settled over the fields, and for the first time in generations, humans and aliens alike felt a quiet hope. Nera's children slept peacefully, humans prepared for the next day's work, and somewhere beyond the atmosphere, the galaxy watched, unknowing, as a quiet revolution began, not of weapons, not of fleets, but of life itself. And somewhere in that vast distance, the first whispers began to travel across the stars. Humanity was rising. Not through domination, not through fear, but through their unyielding determination to endure, to protect, and to care. A mother's plea, so simple and desperate, had set the wheels in motion for something the galaxy had never imagined. The dawn over verdant reach was crisp and clear, the sky painted in soft shades of gold and blue. Birds, strange and native to the planet, sang from the edges of the fields, and humans moved with purpose, tending to the crops, feeding livestock, and repairing machinery. Nera, the alien mother who had become the symbol of this quiet revolution, worked alongside them. Her movements were fluid, precise, and tireless. Even after months of labor, she seemed inexhaustible. Every step she took was calculated, every motion intentional, yet gentle when interacting with her children or the other alien newcomers. Word of her dedication had spread to the far edges of verdant reach. Aliens who had been wandering between devastated worlds or hiding in the shadow of collapsing empires had heard of this unusual place where humans fed children instead of seeking power. Small groups began arriving, some limping from injuries, others carrying the hollow expressions of hunger and fear. They came because of Nera, because of the hope she represented, because of the whispered stories of a human world that defied the galaxy's cruel expectations. At first, humans were cautious. Galactic law was strict, and accepting refugees without sanction was risky. Yet the farmers of verdant reach were unlike bureaucrats or soldiers. They acted not from fear or ambition, but from the simple principle of survival and humanity. Each new alien arrival was met with careful guidance, warm food, and clear instructions. Nera taught them how to carry out farm work, how to manage schedules, and most importantly, how to care for their own young. Humans, in turn, adapted their tools and techniques to accommodate the alien physiology. Irrigation channels were widened for taller beings, harvesters recalibrated for alien strength, and housing built for species that did not share human anatomy. The cooperative's output began to soar. What had once been a modest farm supplying local trade now produced a surplus rivaling entire planets. Machines that had once been simple labor aids were redesigned to work in tandem with alien strength. Humans studied the aliens' movements, noting how they could lift and manipulate weights far beyond human capacity, and incorporated these observations into mechanical designs. Productivity increased, not by the efficiency of a single species, but by the harmony of many. One evening, Mara walked through the fields, watching the sunset reflect off the golden wheat. Nira was nearby, supervising a small group of alien workers as they adjusted the irrigation system. Her children, now stronger and more alert, played at the edges of the field, occasionally peering at the humans with curious eyes. The sight filled Mara with a sense of wonder. The galaxy had taught humans that strength was measured in weapons and fleets. Verdant Reach was proving that the greatest strength was measured in compassion and ingenuity. Yet not all was peaceful. Galactic authorities had begun to notice Verdant Reach. Traders who once passed through the Outer Rim had started reporting unusual activity. An increasing number of aliens working alongside humans, farms producing more than expected, and most strikingly, no signs of conflict or exploitation. Embassies and bureaucrats began questioning the humans' intentions, sending envoys with stern warnings. One such envoy arrived quietly, a tall humanoid in formal attire, eyes cold and calculating. "You are violating interstellar regulations," he said. "The aid you provide to these aliens is illegal. You are destabilizing trade networks and labor markets. Cease immediately or face consequences." "We are feeding children," she replied simply. "We are not breaking any law of life. If that is considered illegal, then the galaxy has lost its sense of reason." Larger powers would come, curious or threatened by the sudden rise of a human-led cooperative that refused to play by the galaxy's rules. But Mara was not afraid. Humans had survived worse, adapted to worse, and thrived precisely because they did not rely on permission to do what was right. As weeks passed, the cooperative grew even larger. Nira worked tirelessly, training the newcomers, organizing food distribution, and ensuring that her children and all alien younglings were fed and cared for. The aliens, inspired by her determination, began to take initiative, suggesting improvements in farming techniques, machinery adjustments, and crop management strategies. Together, humans and aliens created a system far more efficient than anything a single species could have imagined. The children of both species grew curious and bold. Human children learned alien gestures and sounds, imitating them with giggles and laughter. Alien children, in turn, began recognizing patterns in human work, learning not only gestures but understanding the rhythm of labor, the patience required to coax life from soil, and the importance of teamwork. It was education without formal classrooms, a living lesson in resilience, adaptation, and cooperation. One afternoon, while repairing a broken irrigation pump, Nira paused and surveyed the fields. She noticed a young alien child struggling to carry a basket of grain. Instinctively, she lifted the child in her strong arms, setting them gently beside a human worker. The human smiled, nodding at her. "They will learn. They just need time," he said. Nira nodded, understanding that her efforts were not just about survival, but about creating a legacy. The galaxy began to murmur. Nearby systems sent observers, curious about this unprecedented human-alien cooperation. Traders began rerouting supplies to Verdant Reach, seeking the efficiency and stability they had once thought impossible. Alien leaders whispered to their councils about the humans who could feed the young and organize the weak into strength. Word spread quietly, almost reverently, that humans were not just resilient, they were transformative. Conflict eventually arrived, but not in the way anyone expected. A neighboring system, noticing Verdant Reach's rising productivity, attempted to enforce tariffs and restrictions. They sent ships to patrol trade routes, hoping to control the flow of food and resources. But the humans were ready. They had anticipated such challenges and had built systems of distribution that could reroute supplies across vast distances. When the alien ships arrived, they found trade continuing, production increasing, and a workforce united in purpose. No violence occurred, yet the demonstration of efficiency and cooperation alone was enough to give pause to those who had underestimated humanity. Nira's children continued to grow. They learned to walk with steady confidence, imitate simple words, and perform basic tasks in the fields. Humans were astonished at their rapid development, but Nira understood. Alien physiology allowed for accelerated growth when nurtured with proper care and nutrition. She watched them carefully, knowing that the strength of the next generation would be a testament to the efforts of both species. One evening, as the twin moons rose over verdant reach, Mara and Nira stood at the edge of the fields, watching the children play. "Your people are remarkable," Nira said softly, her voice carrying both awe and gratitude. "You have shown me that life can endure, even when the galaxy has given up." Her desperate request for help, uttered in a moment of fear and love, had sparked a revolution of cooperation and strength. Humans had listened. Humans had acted. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy something it had never seen. That true power did not come from fleets or armies, but from the ability to care for life, to endure hardship, and to transform adversity into strength. But even as peace and productivity flourished, challenges loomed. Galactic powers were watching, and some were growing impatient. They had not seen humans like this before, beings who could organize, adapt, and protect life without seeking conquest or revenge. They did not understand that compassion could become strength, that endurance could become power. And as whispers spread through the stars, verdant reach became a symbol, a quiet challenge to the assumptions that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. Within the farm, life continued. Humans and aliens worked side by side, their differences no longer barriers but tools for innovation. Machines were refined constantly, crops were rotated with precision, and each new arrival, each child, each seed planted became part of a growing testament to the human way. There was no fear, no hatred, only purpose. And then one day, the first formal recognition came. A small group of alien refugees approached Mara with a petition, requesting that verdant reach be declared a sanctuary, protected from external interference. Mara considered the proposal, understanding the risks. Galactic powers might respond with anger or sanctions, but she also knew the truth. Verdant Reach had already become more than a farm. It was a hub of resilience, a laboratory of cooperation, and a demonstration of humanity's greatest strengths. "We will accept the responsibility," she said finally. "But we will not compromise who we are. We feed the hungry, we protect the weak, we endure, that is our law." Other human worlds began to follow the model, creating partnerships with alien refugees, teaching, protecting, and organizing. It was not a political movement, not a war. It was the rise of a civilization defined by endurance, ingenuity, and the simple act of feeding the children. Even the galaxy's skeptics began to notice. Envoys who had once threatened now observed in awe as humans and aliens worked together seamlessly. Productivity soared, children thrived, and the once dismissed humans demonstrated something no empire could ignore: the ability to turn compassion into strength, weakness into opportunity, and desperation into triumph. Nira, standing in the heart of the fields, watched her children play and her fellow workers labor with skill and purpose. She had come seeking only sustenance for her young, expecting perhaps a day or two of safety. Instead, she had witnessed the birth of a new force in the galaxy, one built not on conquest, but on endurance, cooperation, and the indomitable will of humans to protect life, no matter the cost. As night fell over verdant reach, fires flickered in small communal huts, lanterns reflected in the eyes of children and workers alike, and the wind carried the scent of earth, growth, and possibility. The galaxy, far away and yet so attentive, could only watch as humans quietly but unmistakably changed the rules of survival. The revolution was not violent, not loud, but unstoppable. And at its heart was the simple truth that had begun months ago with one alien mother's plea: feed the children, and the rest will follow. The suns rose slowly over verdant reach, casting long shadows across the fields that now stretched farther than anyone had ever imagined. The work never stopped. Humans and aliens moved together in a rhythm perfected over months of shared labor. The alien children, once fragile and silent, ran among the wheat, laughing, chasing the small native animals, their strength and confidence growing with every passing day. Nira walked among them, her eyes bright, her body steady. She no longer looked weary. She had found something here, a community, safety, and a chance for her children to live. But the galaxy was restless. Word of verdant reach's successes had reached the far-flung empires, and the whispers of admiration had turned into warnings, then threats. A massive fleet appeared at the edge of the planet's orbit, ships sleek, armed, and imposing. They were not here for trade. They were here to impose order, to remind humanity that the galaxy had rules, rules that forbade compassion for the weak, rules that demanded obedience, and rules that no single human world should ever challenge. Mara stood at the command center of verdant reach, observing the fleet through the large viewport. Her hands rested on the console, steady despite the tension in her chest. "They think we are weak," she said quietly. "They think feeding the hungry makes us vulnerable. Humans of Verdant Reach, you have violated interstellar law by harboring alien refugees. Cease your actions immediately and submit to inspection, or we will take measures to enforce compliance. If you seek to enforce your rules, you will find that Verdant Reach is prepared." Months of labor, months of cooperation, and months of shared struggle had forged something far stronger than fear: unity. In the days that followed, the humans and aliens worked tirelessly, not only in the fields but in preparing the planet for defense. Machines were modified, not for war, but to ensure that supply lines remained intact. Food storage was increased, water purification systems enhanced, and transportation networks optimized. Humans had no intention of starting a conflict. They had no need, but they would not abandon their principles. Nira supervised a group of alien workers as they repaired a hydroponic system. Her children played nearby, their laughter echoing across the fields, a sound so human, so ordinary, yet so defiant in the face of potential annihilation. She watched them and felt a surge of pride. These children, once starving and weak, were now strong, intelligent, and alive because humanity had chosen to endure rather than fear. Meanwhile, Mara coordinated with the other human colonies that had begun adopting the Verdant Reach model. Though separated by light years, their messages were precise, efficient, and filled with solidarity. The galaxy had assumed humans could be intimidated, that isolation would force them to surrender. They had underestimated the human ability to connect, adapt, and organize. When the Admiral finally ordered the fleet to land troops, they found an unexpected sight. Verdant Reach was not a defenseless farm. It was a network of organized systems, coordinated human and alien labor, and communities that had learned to protect themselves in nonviolent ways. Fields were cultivated with precision, machinery moved with purpose, and food was distributed with fairness. The fleet realized that attacking the planet would not crush resistance. It would only destroy life, including the very aliens they had deemed insignificant. The humans opened a communication channel to the Admiral once more. "If you come to harm the weak or hungry, you will starve yourselves first. Verdant Reach does not fight with fleets. We fight with life. We endure. We feed. And we will not fail." Trade sanctions were discussed, but found ineffective because Verdant Reach had developed self-sufficiency far beyond expectations. Other empires watched, surprised, as humans turned potential defeat into a demonstration of moral and practical superiority. Nira continued to work in the fields, her body moving with grace and endurance. She no longer saw herself as a refugee. She was a teacher, a guide, and a partner to humanity. Her children ran beside human children, playing games, learning, growing. She realized that her initial plea, simple and desperate, had sparked a revolution not through violence but through life itself. The cooperative grew into a community. Humans and aliens shared knowledge freely. Agricultural techniques improved, medical practices were exchanged, and children of all species were educated together. Schools, workshops, and communal spaces flourished. The planet became a living proof that cooperation was stronger than fear and compassion more powerful than weapons. The galaxy took note. Envoys from distant systems arrived, not with threats but with curiosity. They studied Verdant Reach, asking questions, observing practices, and learning. They were amazed at the efficiency, the resilience, and the harmony achieved by humans and aliens working side by side. What they had assumed was weakness, the willingness to feed those in need, was revealed to be the greatest strength of all. Nira's children grew quickly. Their bodies were strong, their minds sharp, and their spirits vibrant. They learned from humans and aliens alike, absorbing lessons in agriculture, engineering, and cooperation. But they also learned the deeper lesson of endurance. That survival was not just about strength, but about the choices one made, the care one gave, and the courage to protect life against all odds. One evening, Mara stood beside Nira on a hill overlooking the fields. The suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Nira's children played in the distance, their laughter ringing like music. Mara spoke softly. "Do you see? This is why we endure. This is why humans survive, not because we conquer, but because we care. I came here seeking only food for my children. I never imagined I would see a world like this. You have changed not only our lives, but the galaxy itself." Human colonies across distant systems began adopting similar practices, creating networks of care and cooperation. Refugees, once ignored or oppressed, found homes, work, and education. The galaxy slowly began to recognize a new order, one where strength was measured not by fleets, not by weapons, but by the ability to protect, nurture, and endure. Nira's role grew as well. She became a mentor to new arrivals, a liaison between humans and other alien species, and a symbol of what could be achieved when compassion guided action. Her children became leaders in their own right, teaching younger generations the value of resilience, cooperation, and life. And still, the galaxy watched. Some were skeptical, some envious, and some fearful. But the humans of Verdant Reach did not falter. They continued their work, their teaching, their protection of life. Every harvest was a statement, every child fed a message. Humanity would not be underestimated, and strength could take forms the galaxy had never imagined. One quiet night, Nira stood in the fields alone, her children asleep nearby. She looked up at the stars, reflecting on the journey that had begun with a desperate plea. She had arrived seeking only survival. Instead, she had witnessed the birth of a movement, a living proof that humans were extraordinary not because of dominance, but because of endurance, care, and the courage to act when it mattered most. And in the silence of Verdant Reach, she whispered to the universe, "You underestimated them, but they endure, they protect, they feed, and they will never be weak again." The children ran through the rows of wheat, shouting and laughing, carrying baskets of grain, helping wherever they could. The sun rose higher, casting light on a world transformed. Verdant Reach was no longer just a farm. It was a statement. It was a testament. It was humanity. As distant stars twinkled in the night sky beyond, the galaxy understood something new. Humans could not be judged by fleets, by numbers, or by rules. They could only be understood through their actions, their endurance, and the power of their will to protect life. Nira watched her children, and in that moment she knew the truth. Humanity was not only surviving, it was reshaping the galaxy in ways no one had ever expected. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and for the first time in centuries, humans were no longer underestimated.